Today, we are looking back, and I mean way, way back, to uncover the raw, completely unrecorded reality of human birth. You know, we take modern medicine so much for granted today, but we're going to explore what it actually took to bring life into the world during the Stone Age. It's an incredible story of survival, sheer ingenuity, and this massive, hidden network of knowledge that literally kept the human race going.
I want you to just picture this scene for a second. A young woman, maybe 15 to 19 years old, she's squatting on the bare earth, gripping a wooden stake driven into the ground, and she is completely alone. There's no doctor, no painkillers, not even clean water on standby. If something goes wrong in the next few hours, there's absolutely nothing on this entire planet that can save her. And the crazy thing is, this isn't some rare isolated tragedy. This was just Tuesday. This is simply what it meant to give birth in the Stone Age. For the vast majority of human history, this incredibly visceral, high-stakes moment was every single woman's reality.
Which brings us to Section 1, the ultimate survival test.
Now, I want to start with a number that should honestly stop you cold. 1 in 8. Anthropologists studying skeletal remains and modern hunter-gatherer groups estimate that maternal mortality back then was about 1 to 2 deaths for every 100 births. Now, at a quick glance, 1 or 2% might sound, almost survivable. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. A Stone Age woman didn't just give birth once. Over her lifetime, she was giving birth 4, 5, sometimes up to 7 times. So when you run that 1 to 2% risk across 7 pregnancies, her lifetime odds of dying in childbirth climb to a terrifying 1 in 8. To really put that into perspective, let's look at the sheer scale of the danger. When we juxtapose those ancient odds against modern statistics, the contrast is just staggering. We're looking at a 1 in 8 lifetime risk in the Stone Age versus a 1 in 5,000 risk in the modern developed world today. So this wasn't just a tough day she was facing. Over the course of her entire life, childbirth was arguably the single greatest threat to a prehistoric woman's survival. Statistically speaking, it was far more dangerous than childhood diseases, more dangerous than predator attacks, and even more dangerous than starvation.
Moving on to Section 2, the unwritten network.
So how did she even know it was time? I mean, obviously there were no calendars and absolutely no medical due dates. A Stone Age woman tracked her pregnancy by relying entirely on nature and her community. She would count lunar cycles, closely watch her own physical body change, and most importantly, she relied on the collective memory of every older woman in our band who had already gone through it. It was this deeply shared community experience, completely woven into the fabric of their daily lives.
And what's really fascinating is the physical evidence they actually left behind. When labor started, women didn't just wander off randomly into the wilderness. Archaeologists have actually found evidence of dedicated birthing spaces across Europe and Africa. These were small, separate structures positioned very deliberately away from the main camp. And get this, the insides of these huts are often found worn completely smooth from repeated, ritualized use by the women of the group, generation after generation. It proves this was a highly managed, recurring event.
Which brings us to a huge revelation. Birth in the Stone Age was almost never just an accident or something a woman faced completely alone in ignorance. It was actively managed by other women, maybe a mother, a sister, or just an experienced older woman in the group. This woman was, for all intents and purposes, a prehistoric midwife. She had this deep, unwritten reservoir of knowledge passed down mouth to ear for over 200,000 years. She knew exactly which herbs eased pain, she knew how to reposition a breech baby, and she knew exactly how long labor could safely go on before they needed to take drastic action.
Let's look closer at that in Section 3, Stone Age obstetrics. You might not realize it, but the physical position a woman takes during birth matters immensely. For most of the last couple hundred years, modern hospitals have generally had women give birth lying flat on their backs. But let's be real, historically, that position was chosen purely for the convenience of the doctor watching, not the woman doing the actual work. Stone Age women, they never did this. Skeletal and ethnographic evidence shows that birth almost universally happened upright. They were squatting, they were kneeling, or crouching. They literally let gravity do the work, which is a fundamental mechanical advantage that modern obstetrics essentially had to spend 2 centuries relearning. And while they were squatting, they needed leverage. They'd grip a rope, a sturdy branch, maybe another woman's shoulders, or, as we found at several prehistoric sites, a wooden birthing stake.
And actually, these stakes weren't just random sticks someone picked up off the ground. No, they were purpose-built prehistoric medical equipment. They were deliberately driven into the earth and worn down at the exact height a squatting woman's hands would naturally grip during her contractions.
Now, you're probably wondering, what about the pain? Well, obviously there was no epidural, but pain relief absolutely existed. These communities had this incredibly intimate working knowledge of their local environment that they've refined over thousands of years. A really prime example of this is willow bark. Prehistoric women would chew or brew it because it contains something called salicin. Salicin happens to be the exact natural compound that our modern aspirin is derived from. Archaeological and ethnobotanical evidence shows this was used widely across all sorts of cultures. Did it magically eliminate the agony of childbirth? No, of course not. But it was significantly better than nothing, and it totally proves these early communities were actively managing their medical care.
But what happens when things go south? Section 4. When things went wrong. Picture the sheer panic when a situation turns dire, like a breech birth, where the baby is coming out feet first instead of head first. Today, a complication like that usually ends up in a brightly lit operating room within the hour. In the Stone Age, it triggered a frantic but highly systematic response from the attending women. They would immediately try to reposition the mother, then physically attempt to turn the baby by hand, applying pressure at very specific points on the body. It was a desperate, high-stakes attempt to avoid disaster, using instructions that literally nobody had ever recorded, but that absolutely everyone in that hut relied on. Sometimes these manual interventions worked, but sadly, often, they didn't. And we actually have a tragic, undeniable record of this. Over in Siberia, archaeologists uncovered a skeleton dating back roughly 30,000 years. The bones show these unmistakable signs of a young woman who died during an obstructed labor. Her pelvis was fractured under the immense strain, and the baby was never delivered. She serves as one of the only direct physical records we have of exactly how this process could go wrong. It's this tiny micro-narrative of a prehistoric tragedy, just frozen in bone for 30,000 years until she was finally found.
But we actually need to correct a major misconception here. Surviving the labor itself, that was really only half the battle. If a woman made it through the delivery, the danger was far from over. In fact, roughly 2/3, so 66%, of maternal deaths in pre-modern societies didn't even happen during labor itself. They happened in the days immediately after. A woman could survive the absolute most dangerous hours of her life, finally hold her newborn, and still die 4 days later from hemorrhage or postpartum infection. All simply due to the brutal fact that nobody yet understood the microscopic importance of washing hands.
So where does that leave us? Section 5. An unbroken chain.
Here's the absolute most crucial takeaway. Despite every single risk, every terrifying complication, and every tragic death, the Stone Age population kept growing. The human race didn't just survive on blind luck. It was the direct result of a remarkably robust system of human survival. For every single woman lost, dozens more survived specifically because they were supported by collective female knowledge. We're talking about a medical discipline refined over 200,000 years, with zero written records, zero formal training, and zero modern medicine. It was taught entirely hand-to-hand, woman to woman, and it literally carried our entire species forward.
I really want you to think about what this means for you, right now, watching this. Every single person alive today, you, me, literally everyone we know, exists because of this unbroken chain of survival. Somewhere in your specific lineage, stretching back tens of thousands of years, a woman squatted on the bare ground. She gripped a wooden stake, or maybe another woman's shoulders, and she just willed herself through an ordeal with the same odds as a coin flip stacked 7 times over her lifetime. She had no anesthesia, no hospital, not even a name for the complications that could kill her. She just had the accumulated, unrecorded wisdom of the women beside her. Which leaves us with this final, somewhat haunting thought to consider. This incredibly complex system of survival lived entirely in the memory of women, and it practically vanished the absolute moment literacy arrived, simply because nobody thought to write it down before it faded away. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, how much more brilliant, absolutely essential human history was lost forever, simply because no one wrote it down. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gives you a whole new appreciation for the unseen architects of human survival.